Good morning. Welcome back here at ESCMID Global TV, brought live to you from the ESCMID Global 2025 in Vienna. My name is Judith Cohen, and you have just joined me here in our TV studio, where I am welcoming my new guest, who is also live here with me in the studio, and is no one less than Huldrych Günthard, and he is one of the keynote lecturers this year's ESCMID Global. Huldrych is a senior attending physician and head of the HIV lab at the University Hospital of Zurich in Switzerland. And tomorrow he will be holding a keynote lecture at 11 o'clock in Hall 1, so just note that down, on the title HIV from Needle Parks to Injectables. And we are very happy to have Huldrych here in our TV studio to give us a little bit of a teaser towards his own keynote lecture so we can know what to expect. So warm welcome to you, Huldrych. Thank you so much for coming here to the studio. Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. I understood that your keynote lecture tomorrow will be sort of a chronological journey from the needle parks to injectables. Does everyone know what a needle park is? Could you explain a little bit more about that?
I don't know whether everybody knows that, but I think people in my age, they know, because that was quite a scene. It was basically an acronym for a park where people would inject and deal drugs openly, and in Zurich we had at the time at the end of the 90s we had the largest open drug scene in Europe.
Wow.
And actually the park where this happened was the Platzspitz, also we call it Platzspitz in Swiss German, but that was then called the Needle Park because there were lots of needles around.
Yeah. From intravenous drug users.
Yes, intravenous drug users, of course. Yeah.
Did you see HIV outbreaks coming forth from that? Is that
Yes,
related?
exactly. I mean, there was a huge HIV epidemic ongoing at the time. I mean, that was the case basically in all places where people injected drugs, because at the beginning of this intravenous drug consumption, there was no syringe programs, there was nothing to prevent the spread. They would exchange the needles and the syringes, and so that's the best way to transfer HIV from one person to another.
Yeah, so for how many years have you been working in the field of HIV?
Now 35 years.
35 years, so
yes.
You've seen a lot.
Yeah, I really entered the field as a young doctor, also after finishing medical school in '91, when the peak was at the top.
Yeah. So how was the situation back then?
You know, it was, I would say, very, very frightening. People were really frightened, and not just, some people, because it really entered the whole population, the fear, I mean, because at some point people knew other families who had some losses from HIV, and not just intravenous drug use, also heterosexuals, and then of course the men having sex with men. I mean, that came all together. At the beginning, nobody really knew what's going on and how these different epidemics interact, or do they interact, and it was just clear that we have had a big problem. And of course, the Needle Park was like the open theater in a way, There people could see it, and it was in the middle, basically, of Zurich, at the prime spot,
Broad daylight.
And it was thousands of people every day coming there, It was not just a little bit of drug dealing and drug consumption. And
hard to imagine these days.
Yes, it's hard. It's hard to imagine. Yeah.
So in these 35 years, you've seen the HIV landscape evolve tremendously. Well, when would you say was the first big change that you noticed?
There were many changes. I mean, I would say there are basically the first phase I entered was really the desperate phase, just because people just died, and we couldn't do anything. We just could treat a little bit opportunistic infections, but at the end of the day, the virus won, immunosuppression was there full blown, and then all these different opportunistic infections at the end led to death. And then the big thing was, of course, 95, 96 when the triple therapy came. I mean, that was like a miracle.
Yeah.
And that led us the way that we should go on later. Those drugs, of course, they were still quite difficult to take. They were toxic, but still, I mean, the mortality just dropped within 2 years, about a factor of 10.
Yeah, so the efficacy outweighed the safety issues.
Absolutely. And then he had to learn how to use those treatment regimens best. New drugs came. Then, of course, resistance occurred. You know, it wasn't that simple as we thought first. And then people living with HIV, sometimes, of course, they suffered a lot of toxicity. They didn't want to take the drugs. So it was also this whole discussion and when is it necessary to take those drugs, and can we wait? And over the years, we learned a lot more about when to use those drugs, and now we use it in everybody right away, basically, because we learned that, and we have what's really special in HIV is the quality of studies that have been done from basic science to clinical science. You know, all the randomized clinical trials, they were always top class, and I think that's the reason we have now incredibly fundamental data that we can use. So we really have evidence what we do.
Why was that possible for the field of HIV, such top-notch
I think
research?
That's my personal interpretation. I think it's the reason was, you know, it was such a dramatic pandemic coming up. It's a sexually transmitted disease, you know, so at some point probably most of people potentially could have been affected.
It could be the taboo
exactly,
atmosphere, right?
And from the beginning it was a multidisciplinary attack. You know, it was not just one board examined field looking a little bit at an organ and nobody else. So it was from the beginning MDs, other physicians, immunologists, virologists, and then, of course, also mathematical modelers early on, you know. So one really worked together and tried to understand what's going on. And pathogenesis research was always very important in HIV. We didn't just do things, you know, we wanted to understand what happened. Also, for example, after that, after having the new antiretrovirals, then we looked what happened in the body. You know, we looked in lymph nodes. We tried to understand on the cellular level what these drugs did, and I think that was really the motor of advancing the field.
Yeah. So maybe the largest progress has been with the developing of the first therapy that became available, or would you say that more recent developments in the treatment area have also been hugely progressive? Absolutely.
I mean, I think that's the amazing story about HIV, that so far it never stopped. You know, it just went on, new innovation, and I think now. I mean, I cannot talk about 44 years now, because the HIV history is now basically 44 years after discovering the virus. And but now we are at the point where we have long-acting drugs. You know, we can inject drugs every 2 months, and for some people, this is really a change again, which helps them to overcome stigma. You know, they don't have to carry around the tablets, the pill boxes anymore, and the drugs work really well. They are well tolerated, and that's not for everybody, but for some, it's a big game changer. And there are newer ones at the horizon, which might allow us to inject every 6 months, and these, I think, then will really be a big game changer. Because 2 months, you know, is still. You know, it's 2 months, and you have to come even more than with the pills.
You're still fully aware of that you have a disease that needs treatment.
Exactly, but I think that if it goes towards 6 months, that will really help a lot of people.
So how is the efficacy of these longer-term drugs
what we know,
in relation to the older therapies?
The every 2 months drug regimen that we use now, that's the same, so it's non-inferior to what we use otherwise. And the 6 months, we don't know yet. I mean, that's now, phase 1, 2 trials ongoing, and we will have to learn what's going on. Is it
looking hopeful already?
It's looking not bad. I would say it looks quite promising. At least people work heavily on it. The big question is what drugs you take, because for the 6 months intervals. And for example, now we have one more new drug class, the capsid inhibitors. That's lenacapavir, that just was coming on the market over the last 1-2 years. And this is a very potent drug and has the ability to be formulated as a long-acting drug. And that needs now partners. And there are different potential partners that are evaluated now. One group is broadly neutralizing antibodies, and that looks quite good. But the problem with the broadly neutralizing antibodies is they are not so broad as we like to have them. You have to probably do some testing before to see whether they could work or not. So. And then there's another drug, islatravir, that is potentially also can be long-acting. It's a nucleotide type of drug, and so we have different drugs that could be used, but we will see.
Yeah, which to apply to whom? Yeah. So it's a continuously evolving pipeline, if I'm correct. So huge progress has been made from the time of the needle parks until now. Are there still unmet needs? Are there still issues that really, really need to be addressed?
Yeah, I mean, we talk now about the good side, the successful story about HIV, but that's mostly happening in the resource-rich countries. Yeah. And I mean, huge progress has also made in the resource-limited settings, the global efforts all together, UNAIDS, and then of course the US, the PEPFAR program, which was an amazing tool to help the global advancements in HIV. But this is now all at stake. It's all maybe over. We don't know. Yeah. And if this is going to be over, then we will have a resurgence of HIV as we have never seen it before. Yeah. So, of course, we really don't know. Maybe other countries jump in. Maybe, I think it's a big moment.
It shows that all the factors need to be working.
Absolutely, and we cannot
time together. That if there's one link missing, then
absolutely. And if we cannot cure HIV, and we have some anecdotal cases, but that's not working for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think there is nothing available soon that will be making us healing HIV. I think so.
Do you think it's possible? I mean, we don't have a glass. How do you
I think if we pull together, if we continue to do as research at the quality we did, I think we might figure out how to do it. Maybe not a sterilizing cure, but a functional cure. Yeah. That we kind of do a combination of reducing the latent reservoir, but also, for example, boost immunity with some therapeutic vaccines, and these kind of combinations, I think, could lead to a functional cure at some point. Yeah. But then, of course, to really get rid of HIV, we will need a vaccine. A sexually transmitted infection, you don't just get rid of. I mean, tell me anyone that any sexually transmitted disease we have overcome. I don't know of any.
Oh, I never thought about that. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so there's still much to do. even though there is so much progress being made. I think this is going to be a very, very interesting talk you're going to be having tomorrow for a large group of ESCMID participants. Thank you so much, Huldrych, for coming here and taking the time to be with us in the TV studio and unveiling a little bit of your lecture that you will be holding tomorrow in Hall 1 at 11 o'clock. So that's on Monday, April 14th, 11 o'clock. So make sure to follow Huldrich's keynote lecture tomorrow on HIV. We will be taking a short break here at ESCMID Global TV. We will be back at 12 o'clock, and we will be talking about the Pipeline Monday. So it's a very interesting topic. So make sure to tune in again at 12 here at the platform ESCMID Global TV Live. We hope to see you then.